morning, ladies. I am so happy to have you with me this morning. My name is Naomi Nkealah. As I spoke to you on email, and I wanted to interview you because we're living in an era of COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that has been on parents' minds is homeschooling. How do we deal with the fact that the kids cannot go to school? At least not all kids can go to school because parents are very scared of the risk. So I have Zanele Makoti this morning with me, who is a practicing homeschooling parent. And I have Karin van Oostrum, who is the expert from Pestalozzi to tell us about homeschooling. And the reason we're doing this is because we're looking at science and society as a very important part of us. I belong to the South African Academy of Science, and I'm on the working group for science and society. So we thought, why don't we talk about something that has relevance for our society? So Karin, I'm going to start with you for the benefit of our viewers. Please explain to us, what is homeschooling?
Homeschooling is when the child is taught in his own home. Okay. That is Brian Ray, the very, very well-known researcher on homeschooling, defines it as parent-led, home-based education. So it is when the child is taught within his family, in his family surroundings, mostly in his own home, and that's not at another place. It's when he's taught in his own home.
Okay, so basically it has to be within the home, which is like the environment where the child is comfortable, right?
That's right, yes. I must also tell you that the Pestalozzi Trust also accepts applications from members who teaches the child elsewhere, say with a grandmother or with an aunt, another family member, not in his own home, because we feel that the responsible person is still there and the child is looked after. There's no welfare issue.
Okay, I think that's a very important caveat to add to that definition. So thank you very much.
That's right.
Let me come to you because you have done this. So I want to speak to us from the perspective of a practicing homeschooling parent. So my first question to you is, as a parent, why did you choose to do homeschooling for your children?
Okay, for me, I saw it as an extension of parenting. My philosophy in life is to live a purpose-driven life. And I wanted my kids to realize their potential. So I pulled out my daughter at school because her interests were not the same as the subjects that were offered at school. And I saw that she was kind of being put in a certain box, and her interests she was beginning to numb them down. So I wanted her to realize her full potential and to live a purpose-driven life. And as a parent, I saw it fit to take her out of mainstream and homeschool her to bring the best out of her.
I get you. I get you. It's all about the child and what you think as a parent is best for your child. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Zanele. Let me come back to you, Karin, because this is something that you don't just do out of the blue. So tell us, what are the practical steps a parent needs to take to register as a homeschooling parent?
Okay, the first step normally is just to remove your child from the school. But in the COVID-19, everything is a bit mixed up. Nothing is regular. So we advise parents to join the Pestalozzi Trust. We act like an umbrella organization just to look after homeschooling parents. So we look after the parents' rights so that they can do what is best for their child, because parents know their children best. And we look after the rights of the child so that his right to education is not being infringed. So they're welcome to join us so that they just have someone to back them up should something goes wrong in this whole process. So to register for homeschooling is very simple. You go to the Education Department website, your provincial education department website, and for your province, sorry, you are in your province, but you look for home education, and then you then you download the form. But mostly the form is now online. So just complete the form and submit it. But everything doesn't go, as it should nowadays. The education department is quite overloaded, and so just be very patient. And if you have any problems, you're also welcome to email me, and I'll give you a link that I think might work, and we can assist you with whatever you need.
Okay.
And then, so it's quite simple. So there's sometimes it's a hitch when giving notice to the school, because many of the schools are very anxious now because they're losing customers. So just give notice. It's an official action that you do. You're giving notice, and then you ask for the transfer certificate, because you actually need that in order to register. Okay, so that's and then you can start working with your child, discuss with your family what you would like to do in your homeschooling. As Zanele said, she wants a purpose-driven life. Other families want something exactly like school. So families vary immensely in their aims and their end goals in home education.
Okay.
So, but every family works it out according to his own purposes and the child's interests and needs.
Yes. Okay. So it sounds to me like a pretty straightforward process. So thank you.
It should
All
be.
right. Good. Thank you. Okay, Zan, let me come back to you. Now, what would you say are the advantages of homeschooling, personally as parents?
There's many advantages just from the community of homeschoolers that I hang around with. Personally, though, for my kids, it has I'd sum it up as realizing their human rights. My kids get to wake up in the morning, decide what they're going to do. They decide on their learning methods. So they also give me their opinion. So decisions are not made only by me. I take into account their interests. So they get the confidence as well that their opinions, not just in education, in life, it matters. And on a daily basis, they get to learn what their strengths are, what their the weaknesses are. So we're not, I think the advantage is that they're not being prepared for life, but they are living life and they are participating in life and in decisions that affect them. And from there, they also learn, because with any decision in life, there's positives, there's negatives, there's failure, there's successes. So they also, the other advantage is they are embracing their failure. They are not being rushed to get the goal that accommodates the class average. So the education, because it's tailored to who they are, they get to do things at a pace that is comfortable to them. In that way, when they fail, they're not ashamed of the failure. They have a very positive relationship with failure, because they know that they've succeeded, they've failed, and the successes, they're able to look back and say, this is how the failure has helped me. So the pace is one of the things as well that contributes to that. The tailored education, it helps your child as an individual. The successes, of course, will also be linked, the advantages would linked to your goals as a family. So they would differ again from family to family, but I'm just sharing mine personally and generally what other homeschoolers have said that I interact with. So that the confidence, the relaxed nature of it, the human rights aspect of it, because we take that for granted. We think human rights are something to be taught when they actually something to be experienced. So when they make the decisions about their learning methods, what they want and how they want, they don't want to learn by just sitting on a desk. My kids are very different. One is more on the sciences and the other one is more on the creative side. So their curriculum looks different. If I can call it a curriculum, it looks different for both of them. So that gives them that confidence.
I think a lot of parents doing this would absolutely agree with you. So thank you for sharing those advantages for you as a parent. Before we come to the challenges, and I'm sure there will be some, let me talk to Karin again about that curriculum that Zanele just mentioned. So Karin, where can parents get help with curriculum and online resources and everything they need for successful homeschooling?
When parents start out, often when the children have been at school, they want something like school. So they feel safe with that. So they think if it's not exactly like school, education is not taking place. So there's quite a few curricula which are, we call them boxed curricula or pre-packaged curricula. And they are exactly like, they try to imitate school exactly. So they have tests and assessments and everything that you do at school, they give you that. But often when parents start out like that, they realize, okay, but my child's not learning anything. Look how far behind he is with maths or with, he can't spell even or anything. So he says, no, I'm going to change. So we gathered a few trusted resources on our website under resources, under homeschooling. So you can just look there. And there's also a wealth of resources under sahomeschoolers.org. It's a large website and it's an advertising website, and there you can sit and see anything that you want. But often, when I advise parents, I often tell them that it's just start small, just first at what stage your child is with each skill, and then start working at the stage where he is at.
Yes.
So, that doesn't matter where he should be, at the which grade, whatever, because he's not going to progress faster or better if you do that. Start at the place where he is. And that works perfectly. So there are quite a number of online sources and then normal, traditional book sources that you can use as well.
Okay. sahomeschooling.org. That's one I won't forget.
sahomeschoolers.org, and ours is
homeschoolers.org. Yes.
Yes, and ours is pestalozzi.org. So that's easy.
So there's a world of material out there. Parents must.
Yes, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's almost too much for parents sometimes. They tell me, please help me. I don't know what to do. Where to now? Yeah.
That's also good to know, so that if parents are really struggling to figure out what is best, what is just enough, then they can.
Yeah.
And I think that is a very good thing that parents
know
about. Okay, so that they can be guided in the process. All right, Zanele, now let me come back to you. Okay. And this has been on my mind. This is of particular interest to me as a working parent. So I really want to hear what you think. Do you think a working parent can do homeschooling? What are the challenges that such a parent has to be aware of right now before they start?
Okay. I think, again, it's different for every family. I'll start by emphasizing that. Homeschooling in nature is very flexible. So because of the flexibility of homeschooling, whether you are a single parent, works night shift, your family life as well, your children, the community that you live with, whether you live in an extended family, will also determine that. So yes, you can homeschool while you're working. You can, and what people need to understand as well is not to shy away from getting a tutor. You can get a tutor even if you are a homeschooling mom. The most important aspect in homeschooling is the communication that you will have with your child. It's not about the material itself, but it's understanding the child, who the learner is, because the biggest part of homeschooling is education. And what is education? So in terms of that, homeschooling is very flexible. It doesn't have a time. that this is the time that you need to start, this is the end time. It's catered for every family life. There are challenges though. I did when I started homeschooling when after I left my job to homeschool. And then as we were facing other challenges, I went back to work. For my own kids, I live with my mother and she's old and she doesn't have the same patience that I have. So for me, I had to find other ways. So I had to leave my job and start looking at working from home, working.
Yes.
So it needs somebody to be able to adjust.
Mm.
So it is doable with compromises as well, and looking at your family and the structure. If there's two parents, if you can also have one working during the day and one working a night shift, families differ. If you're a single parent, there's a community that we live in within our extended families. There's tutors for that support. So people shouldn't just think that homeschooling means that I must be a stay-at-home mom. I must do it. Works for me, yes, it works for others, but you need to look at your own life and your own setup. So on yes, it is doable because it's very flexible, but you have to look at the certain aspects of your own life.
I think you have given me a very honest answer. That's a very honest answer. Yes, it's doable, but there are challenges, and every parent needs to make tough decisions, right?
Yes.
You have to make a tough decision. You have to stop work at some point and do it, and then go back to work. So yes, that's something that parents really need to think about.
It's actually the parents need to look at their willingness to adapt.
Yes.
So I think if anything COVID has taught us as well is how our willingness to adapt to the situation that we're being presented with, and looking at the goals they have for their homeschooling, and looking at the kids as well. And the kids are also there to give solutions. I think we tend to think that kids are being taught. Kids cannot teach us. And homeschooling would also help you look at things at different angles. So involve your kids in the decision making.
I like that. I absolutely love it. After all, it's all about them, right? So get the kids involved. Thank you very much, Zanele. Let me come back to Karin. Let's talk about the end result of the whole process. What are the final exams that are there available for homeschoolers to take?
In South Africa today, homeschoolers take mainly 4 kinds of exams. That is South African NEC and the Cambridge and the American Homeschool Diploma and the GED as the SAT.
Okay.
And all of them are you can use if you want to go to university. But if there are others too. And these are the main ones. So like the baccalaureate and so on, but these are the main ones. And if you are worried about the alternative qualification, you can just look on USAF's website. It's University of Africa, USA small f.
Okay.
It's the old matriculation board. So they have a long list of 34, 37 alternative exemption qualifications that you can use to go to university. Oh, and
very interesting.
Some of these exams are taken physically and some are done online.
Okay. And the online is also a very good option, considering that we're living in of COVID-19. So that's really good to know, Karin. Thank you for that information. I will remember USAF, definitely. So parents can always consult that list to see institutions their kids can go to. All right. Zanele, yes, another question for you. You mentioned communities of support earlier, right? So tell us a bit more about these communities of support. What do they do and how can one join them?
Okay, there's different homeschooling communities for depending, some are area-based, So some are location based, based on your area. Some are based on activities that your child will partake in. So we do have different communities. I think a lot of homeschoolers, myself, speaking for myself, I am in about 3 or 4 different communities. The one community is based on location, because you want your kids to socialize, but socializing doesn't only come with homeschooling communities. They also socialize with kids who go to mainstream because of the activities that they take part in. And then there's communities that are based on the interests of your child. So if your child is interested in gaming, if your child is interested in horse riding, you will find that they link up with other riders, whether they are homeschool communities or not. So in as much as you get homeschool communities that would support you with the frustrations that come at sometimes with the successes that come with homeschooling, but there's also mixed communities. So we don't live in an island, you know. We're not. I think there's a misconception about socializing as a homeschooler, you know. But we live in communities of people. Yes, you will have homeschool communities because there's times when you do activities and you meet up with other homeschoolers when the other kids are at class, are in the class, you know. So communities vary. There's homeschool communities for support, educational communities. I think social media also helps in that regard because you can link up with anybody anywhere in the world on interests that your child has. But it is also important to link up with the community where you live, because the challenges you face, like in my area, we face a load reduction challenge, you know, which is a real challenge. And I may not be able to link up with other communities that are in other areas that are not faced with that. So that helps in the location communities. They help with those sort of challenges and how we go about accessing certain material. And we also utilize the skills of the parents. You do get working parents. So we don't necessarily need to always go to people out there. You know, the community becomes strong in that way if your child has an interest in a field that one of the parents is working in. That parent can then come in as a mentor. So a community of homeschoolers is kind of intergenerational, because your kids don't only interact with kids their own age. And because of the location as well, you find that my 10-year-old has an interest with a 16-year-old who is homeschooled. And in that way, it helps her communicate with people of different ages. It also boosts that confidence. So our communities are pretty much intergenerational, and the discussions as well within the communities are also intergenerational. So I don't want you to think of homeschool communities as just play dates. You know, yes, there are play dates. Yes,
Very
there are
true.
play dates. But it's also about families. It's different families. It's skills. It's skill based. It's interest based. So it's not things like age. It's not like you would see in your normal school where grade ones are kids who are 5 and 6 year old, and their break time, their lunch time, they've got an allocated space. I think that's another beauty of homeschooling. It's what the homeschool communities present themselves. And again, because the communities, my kids, when they go to the music, they interact with kids in mainstream. It helps them embrace. So you don't get a lot of discrimination. They learn from this early age to embrace people who are different from them. And so the communities are pretty much diverse. They're not strictly based on grades, age, and what you call a gender. So they pretty much intergenerational, different genders, and so on.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important dynamic for parents to note about the communities of scholars. That's very good. Thank you very much. Karin, let me check something. The last thing I need to check with you, because you've mentioned the UNISA list, but I just want to be sure. In South Africa, we have private universities, for example, Monash. So would a homeschooler qualify to enter a university like Monash?
Yeah, definitely, yes.
Okay.
Homeschoolers are actually in demand often at universities because they've proven that they can work on their own, they can work independently, and they can persevere, when they start out. They won't give up after 6 months or a year. So
Okay.
I know of homeschoolers who are actually, to go to Monash and to other private universities.
Okay, that is encouraging to know. That's really good to know. Okay, because that is another possibility for parents out there. All right. Last word to you, Zanele. Because you're coming from the that angle of having the experience, would you say that as being a successful homeschooler, would you say that homeschooling is something that parents should definitely give serious consideration to in this era of COVID-19? Because we're looking at the 2021 academic year. Would you make that recommendation for South African parents?
I would definitely. When I started homeschooling, my idea was school at home. It has evolved since then. So whatever pushes you towards homeschooling, for me, it's not of the greatest matter. So people might be pushed in because of COVID, but once they start exploring and once they start building those relationships with their kids, then they get to understand it at a deeper level. So I would definitely say, I think what COVID has done to us, it's answered it's opened a can of some of the issues we've had in terms of education. Where the part, where does education take place? It certainly doesn't. Education doesn't only take place in a desk. Education is not only in a class. And I think we've had another issue that's been raised, that if you are saying parents must homeschool, what about those who are in rural communities who don't have access to homeschooling? What I want people to understand is what education is. Is education having gadgets? What is education? Are kids in rural areas not in an area with indigenous knowledge? Planting itself is an education. So COVID, yes, certainly parents should consider homeschooling, and they need to honestly ask themselves what education is. Where does it take place, and understand learning happens with one person, with a learner, whether you are in space, whether you are wherever. There's places where you cannot take that computer to get that online learning. There's places, but the one person you can take, the one thing you will take is always yourself.
Yes.
We didn't struggle much with the lockdown. Yes, the challenges is we couldn't go to horse riding. But because my kids have learned who they are, they've learned what they like, they found things within things as simple as rocks. They would find stones and rocks, and that provided an education for them. And because we started planting last year, we live in a small yard, we live in a township with small yards, but that I think people like to say we don't have resources. Whatever is around you is a resource. People need to learn to live from where they are first before fantasizing about getting to other places or thinking that somebody with access to internet has got a better advantage. I've been homeschooling my kids, and I've only started using the internet as a resource only during the lockdown. It's only now during the lockdown. Otherwise, my kids are more of practical learners, and you don't just acquire skill by sitting on a desk or having access to online facilities. you have people around you. The biggest lesson to learn in homeschooling is you can learn from anybody of any different age. So you can learn from your younger sister, you can learn from the uncle, from that unemployed uncle who's sitting in the couch, you know. So I think that's what also helps with homeschooling, that homeschoolers don't discriminate, because they've learned to understand what education is, how learning takes place, and they've gotten to understand themselves. So definitely, I think people should consider homeschooling during this COVID time. COVID has rattled that aspect of where education takes place, and I think we are yet to experience more issues, more dynamics in the world that we live in, that will force us to look at what is education, that will force us to look at indigenous knowledge. That's why I say to the rural people in rural areas, they are surrounded by learning experiences all the time. You don't need to go out from where you are to learn something, you know. So definitely people should start looking into home education. I think COVID has taught us that our education system needs to change, and we need to be more diverse, and we need to cater to different types of people. So for your question, it's a definite yes.
There you have it, South Africa. There couldn't have been a better response than that. Thank you very much, ladies. Zanele Makoti and Karin van Oostrum, your insights on homeschooling are very important, and I think the parents out there would appreciate the information. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Zan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Karen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.